The sun was already beginning to dip behind the orange cliffs when Ethan received the request. The app showed a pickup at an old, decommissioned gas station near Torrey, Utah, with a destination somewhere near Henryville, right in the heart of scenic Byway 12. Distance, about 75 miles. Estimated time, 1 hour and 45 minutes. He hesitated for a second. There weren't many signs of life along that route at this hour. But the fare was good, and it had been a rough week. He tapped accept. As he approached the pickup point, a flicker of unease hit him. The place was completely deserted. The gas station, abandoned for years, looked like a bone half buried in the desert. The windows were shattered, and the pumps covered in dust and dry moss. Then he saw her. A thin woman, almost frail, wearing a coat far too heavy for the warm air. She held a sleeping child in her arms, wrapped in a worn gray blanket. Her skin was pale, and her sunken eyes made it look like she hadn't slept in days. She walked up to the car and opened the back door without saying a word. She gently placed the child on the seat, still cradled in her arms, and only then looked at Ethan. "He sleeps better in the car. Please don't ask questions." Her voice was low, barely a whisper, as if she were afraid of waking someone or something. Ethan nodded slowly, started the car, and glanced at the GPS. The route led straight down scenic Byway 12, no stop scheduled. The sun had already vanished completely, and long shadows stretched across the rock formations as the car picked up speed. The silence inside the vehicle was nearly tangible. Only the sound of the tires against the road and the hum of the engine filled the space, like a breath held too long. The rearview mirror showed only the outline of the woman, still, staring out the window, and the child, still asleep in her lap. But something felt off. The car's temperature gauge flickered, even though the air conditioner was off. First it climbed, then dropped sharply. Ethan checked his phone. No signal. Common for the area, he thought, but still unsettling. Then the child opened their eyes. No sound, no sudden movement. Just two small, dark eyes staring into the rearview mirror, locking onto Ethan's with a strange, hollow intensity. Ethan smiled, trying to be polite, but the child didn't react. Without turning their head, without blinking, the child whispered, "He's following us again." A chill crept up Ethan's neck, as if the air had thickened inside the car. He turned quickly to the woman. "Sorry, what did she say?" The woman didn't answer. She kept gazing out the window as if she hadn't heard anything, as if she wasn't even there. And then the child closed their eyes again. But the unease remained. The car pressed forward along the winding stretch of scenic Byway 12. On either side, towering cliffs glowed red in the fading light, casting long, jagged shadows across the road. The desert seemed to breathe with the heat, alive in its stillness. But inside the car, everything felt suffocatingly quiet. Ethan adjusted the mirror again. The woman hadn't moved. Her posture was statuesque, her chin slightly lifted, her eyes lost in the distance. But the child, now with eyes closed once more, seemed to shift subtly every few minutes, as if reacting to things Ethan couldn't hear or see. He tried the radio, hoping for static or talk radio to break the tension. Nothing. No signal, just a low, intermittent hum. Then something strange happened. The GPS screen flickered once, then again. For a split second, the entire route vanished, replaced by a message Ethan had never seen before. Calculating alternate route. He blinked. The message disappeared, and the map returned, unchanged. Ethan let out a breath, chuckling softly to himself. Just a glitch. Long roads, low reception, weird servers. Happens all the time. But when he glanced in the rearview mirror again, the child's eyes were open. This time, the child wasn't looking at him. They were staring at the side window, wide-eyed, mouth slightly open, as if something was running alongside the car. Ethan resisted the urge to look. Instead, he cleared his throat. "You okay back there?" Silence. Then softly, the child whispered again, barely audible over the hum of the tires. "He's faster at night." Ethan gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. Who's faster? The woman suddenly turned her head toward him, slowly, like someone waking from a long, uneasy sleep. Don't engage, she said, her voice husky. She says things. It's better if you don't listen. Ethan forced a nod, trying to mask the unease curling in his chest, but the feeling grew heavier with each passing mile. He checked the time. They still had over an hour left, and that's when he heard it. A sound, distant but distinct, a soft, drawn-out whistle. It came from the right side of the car, through the window, low and eerie, almost like a human breath forced between teeth. He glanced to the side. There was nothing but open desert and flickering silhouettes of rock spires. He looked in the mirror again. The child was now smiling. Ethan kept both hands tight on the wheel, knuckles pale. He hadn't realized how tense he'd become until his forearms began to ache. The last 30 miles had felt like an hour each, stretched thin by the silence in the car and the weight of invisible eyes. The desert night had fully arrived now. Darkness swallowed the horizon, and the red cliffs, once glowing under the sun, now loomed like black monoliths. No moon, no stars, just the occasional flicker of his headlights bouncing off rock walls and roadside signs long forgotten. He hadn't heard the whistle again, but it didn't matter. The silence was worse. Behind him, the woman whispered something too low to catch. Ethan caught the rustle of fabric as she adjusted her grip on the child. He glanced in the rearview mirror. The child's eyes were open again, wide, glassy, locked on Ethan's reflection. And then, the sound returned. Not a whistle this time. A dull thump from the trunk. He froze. The sound repeated. Thump. Then again. 3 knocks. Rhythmic. Calm. Like someone tapping to let him know they were there. He stared at the mirror again. The woman hadn't reacted. Neither had the child. He opened his mouth, closed it, then turned the volume knob on the dead radio, hoping to drown the noise, but it remained static, unmoving, untouched, like it was mocking him. Thump. This time, the child spoke, louder than before. He's getting impatient. Ethan slammed the brakes. The tires screeched, and the car skidded slightly on the loose gravel at the road's edge. Dust clouded the headlights. The engine growled but stayed on. The woman looked up, startled. What are you doing? There's something in the trunk, Ethan snapped. He opened the door and stepped out into the cold desert air. The night hit him like a wave, dry, silent, suffocating. He walked to the back of the car, each footstep crunching loudly against the gravel in a world that felt too quiet. He stood in front of the trunk, hesitated, then pressed the button. The trunk hissed open. Empty. Perfectly empty. No bags. No loose equipment. No spare tire even. Just a dusty, untouched interior and the echo of his own breath. He stared for a moment longer, heart thudding, then slammed it shut. When he turned back toward the driver's side, the car's interior lights flicked on. The child was now sitting upright, no longer cradled, smiling. Ethan got back in, slowly. The woman didn't look at him. You heard it too, he said. I hear it every time, she replied. But I don't stop anymore. She turned her face to the window again. Ethan shifted into drive. The road stretched ahead like a dark ribbon, curling through shadows and rock. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the wheel. Then the GPS beeped. Estimated arrival, 23 minutes. But the destination now had a name, not just coordinates. It read, Last Stop. The words on the GPS screen pulsed faintly. Last stop. No street name, no zip code, no details. Ethan stared at it, hoping it would change again, that it was a glitch, a mistake. But it didn't. The arrival time counted down. 23 minutes. 22. 21. The road narrowed as they moved forward, the highway giving way to rougher terrain. No more road signs. No mile markers. The pavement cracked and shifted under his tires, as though the land itself was trying to swallow it. Inside the car, the atmosphere grew heavier. The air felt thick, hard to breathe. The windows fogged ever so slightly, even though the ventilation was off. Ethan rolled his window down an inch. Cold, dry air rushed in. The woman still hadn't spoken again. The child hadn't blinked in minutes. "Are we almost there?" Ethan asked, unsure why he even spoke. No response. Then the woman said, without turning, "You've taken this road before. You just don't remember." That stopped him cold. He looked at her in the mirror. "What?" She blinked slowly. "They always forget. That's part of the deal." The child tilted their head. Ethan laughed nervously. "I think I'm going to end this trip right now." He reached for the app. The screen went black, then flashed once. The same words appeared. "Ride in progress. Do not exit vehicle." He tried the ignition. The car wouldn't shut off, not even a click. The woman turned to him now, her eyes sunken, voice almost a plea. "You said yes. You hit accept. That's all he needs." Ethan's breathing became shallow. The child placed a hand on the window and whispered, "He's here." Something passed in front of the car. A shape, not human, tall and distorted, like a silhouette stretched too far. Long limbs bent at the wrong angles, a head that didn't seem attached to a neck. It moved across the headlights in complete silence. Ethan recoiled. He blinked. The road was empty again. But something changed. The smell inside the car, sharp, metallic, like burnt wires and damp earth. The dashboard lights flickered, then dimmed. The GPS now showed no route at all, just a pulsing red dot where the car was. Everything else, black. Then the child said, as if remembering something pleasant, "You're the one who brought him last time. That's why he likes you." Ethan's voice cracked. "I've never been here. I don't know you." The woman looked at him with something like pity or grief. "You will." The road disappeared. One moment there was cracked asphalt beneath the wheels, and the next, nothing. No pavement, no painted lines. Just loose gravel and packed red dust as far as the headlights reached, swallowed by pine shadows and sandstone ridges. Ethan's grip on the wheel was white-knuckled. His eyes darted between the GPS, now completely black, and the mirrors, which only reflected darkness. No sign of the distorted figure, no sign of anything. But the air felt thick, wrong, like they were underwater. The woman shifted beside the child. She seemed calmer now, resigned. "We're almost there," she said. The child's voice joined in softly. "This is where you left him last time." Ethan clenched his jaw. "I don't know what you're talking about." But his hands began to shake, not from fear, from memory. Flash. A child's laugh in the back seat, a scream muffled behind duct tape, a trunk slamming, driving this same road, only faster, and someone whispering in his ear, "Just say yes." The image hit him like a punch to the ribs. No, he couldn't have. Could he? The woman leaned forward now, her face pale, hollow. "He always makes us forget, but the road brings it back, every time." A sign appeared ahead, wooden, warped, barely hanging from a rusted chain between two stone pillars. "Last stop." Ethan slowed as the car crawled past it. A clearing opened beyond the trees. In the middle, a burned-out van, rusted, skeletal, charred dolls inside, and the unmistakable outline of a child-sized shoe on the ground, half buried in the dust. Ethan's vision blurred. His mouth went dry. The woman opened her door. The child slid out on their own now, walking steadily toward the clearing. The woman turned to him one last time. "You brought him. Now you have to take him back." Before he could respond, the door shut. They walked into the clearing. Ethan was alone. He looked down. His phone screen lit up one final time. New ride accepted. Pickup 0.0 miles. A shadow moved past the car again, this time right beside the driver's window. Ethan turned, but there was no one there. Only a single mark, etched into the outside of the glass. A handprint, upside down, too long. The dashboard lights blinked, and the engine shut off without his touch. Silence returned, but not peace, only waiting. It started with a ping. Jared's phone buzzed while he was parked outside a gas station in Escalante, the low Utah sun turning the sky into liquid gold behind the sandstone cliffs. He glanced down. A ride request. Pickup nearby. Destination, a small lodge outside Bryce Canyon. Long drive, good fare. He tapped accept without thinking. The pickup spot was only a few blocks away, an old bed and breakfast with chipping white paint and lace curtains faded to yellow. As Jared pulled up, he spotted them waiting near the mailbox. A couple, dressed in matching gray coats, standing close together, perfectly still. They moved in sync, almost too fluidly, as they approached the car. The woman opened the back door first and entered without a word. The man followed immediately. Neither made eye contact. "Evening," Jared offered, forcing a polite tone as he adjusted the rearview mirror. "You guys heading to Bryce Lodge?" The woman responded, monotone. "Yes, no stops." "All right then." As he pulled away from the curb, he noticed it immediately. The silence. Not the comfortable kind, not even the tense kind. This was something colder, manufactured. As if they were holding their breath at the exact same rhythm. Their faces in the mirror were pale, unmoving. Both looked straight ahead, not at each other, not at him. Jared turned on some light music, hoping to diffuse the stiffness. The woman reached forward between the seats, calm and precise, and turned the volume all the way down. "No music," she said. "He doesn't like it." Jared blinked. "Sorry, who?" Silence. They didn't answer. Just sat back in unison, folding their hands neatly in their laps. He told himself it was fine. Weird passengers weren't new. Long-distance rides attract all kinds. Maybe they were religious, maybe just anxious, maybe they didn't want to talk. But then he noticed something. They weren't speaking to each other, not once, not a glance exchanged, not a whisper. And yet, every time he checked the mirror, their postures had changed. The same change at the same time. Crossed arms, uncrossed, leaning left, leaning right. Perfectly mirrored. The scenic byway stretched before them like a ribbon through nowhere. Light faded, shadows deepened. And in the rearview mirror, two heads turned slowly, simultaneously, toward Jared. He tried to ignore it. He couldn't. The road narrowed as they climbed higher through the canyons. Orange cliffs loomed above, swallowing the last of the daylight. The car's headlights flicked on automatically, casting harsh beams against twisted juniper trees and scattered stones. Jared kept his focus ahead, but his eyes drifted to the rearview mirror. The couple was still staring at him, not blinking, not moving. He cleared his throat. "So, you two been up to Bryce before?" No answer. "I hear the stars are amazing out there, real quiet, peaceful." Still nothing. He glanced again. Now they were closer. They hadn't made a sound, hadn't shifted forward, but their heads filled more of the mirror now, leaning slightly in, still side by side, still perfectly still. Jared's pulse quickened. He flipped on the interior light briefly, just to break the tension. Their eyes didn't even flinch. The woman smiled, barely, a twitch at the corners of her mouth. Jared switched the light off. "Look," he said, trying to stay calm. "If this is some kind of joke, it's not funny." The man spoke then. His voice was soft, hollow. "We're not joking." The woman added, "You shouldn't talk so much when you drive. It distracts you." Jared gave a dry laugh, more from nerves than amusement. "Distracts me? From what, exactly?" They didn't answer. Instead, the man slowly reached into his coat pocket and pulled something out. A photograph, worn edges, folded, refolded, almost torn in two. He passed it forward between the seats. Jared hesitated, took it. His hand trembled as he unfolded it. The photo was of him, behind the wheel. Same car, same route, same two people sitting in the back seat. But the background in the picture wasn't daylight. It was night, pitch black, and in the mirror, his own eyes were shut. Jared looked up sharply. They were sitting normally again, quiet, hands folded. "Where did you get this?" he asked, voice cracking. No answer. Then, in unison, they both whispered, "You've taken us before." The road curved suddenly, and Jared yanked the wheel to stay on track. His hands were slick with sweat. He reached for his phone to check the ride details again, but the app had closed. In its place was a single message on the screen. "Route locked. Do not exit vehicle." The engine hummed steadily, but everything else inside the car felt like it had stopped. The kind of stillness that made sound seem like an intrusion. Jared's hands trembled slightly as he tried to restart the app, but the screen remained frozen. The message, "Route locked. Do not exit vehicle," pulsed softly, as if it were breathing. He looked in the rearview mirror again. The couple hadn't moved, but the way they were sitting had changed. Now their heads were tilted slightly inward, closer to each other, almost touching, like a single figure split in two. The woman had her eyes closed, and the man was staring directly at Jared. Not through the mirror, at him, like he could see the reflection and beyond it. "Look," Jared said, "I don't know what game you're playing, but I didn't sign up for this. If you don't tell me what's going on, I'm ending this ride right now." The man blinked slowly. "You already did, last time." Jared's heart thudded. "What does that mean?" No reply. He flicked on the hazard lights and pulled to the shoulder of the road. Desert silence pressed in around him. No wind, no insects, no passing cars. Just sandstone cliffs and the faint hiss of cooling brakes. He turned to face them. Their eyes were closed again. Jared shook his head. "I'm done." He stepped out of the car. The air was dry and cold, the scent of dust and rock heavy in his nostrils. He moved to the back, trying to calm himself. He'd drive them to the nearest town, drop them off, and block the app, easy. But when he reached the back of the car, the license plate was gone, just an empty frame. And the back of the vehicle, the bumper, the trunk, was scorched, as if it had been through a fire. Blackened, warped metal, charred outlines near the exhaust pipe. He stared at it, stunned. Then something whispered in his ear. "Close, too close. You didn't leave us enough." He spun around. No one was there. The wind began to pick up, low and howling, kicking up dust that stung his eyes. He rushed back to the driver's seat and slammed the door shut. The couple hadn't moved. But now the photo lay on the passenger seat beside him. It hadn't been there before. He picked it up with trembling fingers. Now, in the photo, he wasn't alone in the front seat. Something dark, formless, hunched, sat next to him. Its face turned away, its outline hazy. But one long arm stretched over the center console, pointing toward the road. And underneath the image, written in scratchy ink, "Drive until you remember." Jared's foot trembled on the gas pedal as the car rolled back onto the road. The headlights sliced through the darkness, but it was the kind of night that swallowed light instead of revealing anything. The couple sat motionless behind him. The photo trembled in his lap. That thing in the passenger seat, the black shape with the outstretched arm, felt burned into his vision now. Every time he blinked, he saw it again. "Drive until you remember." He gripped the wheel tighter. His voice was raw when he spoke. "Tell me what this is. Tell me why I'm here." The woman finally opened her eyes. "You asked for it," she said softly. "You picked us. You accepted." The man leaned forward slightly, his chin nearly touching the top of the seat. "You thought you were just giving a ride, but you were part of it." Jared's throat dried. Part of what? They didn't answer. Instead, the radio crackled to life on its own. A garbled voice, faint and distant. They were found inside the wreck, charred beyond recognition. Only one driver, no record of passengers. Jared reached for the dial. It cut out. He stared at the couple in the mirror. But now, Only one of them was there, the woman. The man was gone. He slammed on the brakes. The car skidded sideways onto a dirt turnout. No, no, no. What the hell is this? He turned around. The back seat was empty. The woman was gone too. And yet, the door hadn't opened. The car was still locked. His heart pounded in his ears. He opened his door, staggered out into the cold. A wind whipped through the trees, colder now, unnatural. He called out. Nothing. Then, a sound. A creaking, like strained metal, followed by a soft hiss behind him. He turned back toward the car and stopped. The back door was open, and seated inside now was someone else, not the couple, just a figure, barely visible, slumped in the shadows. Jared stepped closer, slowly, against every instinct. The desert around him had gone completely silent. He leaned down, squinted. A pair of eyes opened in the darkness. His own. The figure in the back seat was him. Burned, scarred, dressed in his old work jacket from a year ago, mouth stitched shut with black thread, pale hand resting on the seatbelt like he had never moved from that spot. And then he spoke, in Jared's voice, perfectly clear despite the stitches. "Now you remember." Jared stumbled backward from the car, his breath ragged in the cold desert air. The figure inside, the burned version of himself, hadn't moved. But those eyes, they stayed locked on him, following, even as he stepped into the headlights. Then he noticed the door on the passenger side was open. No sound, no movement. But the seat was no longer empty. A presence sat there now, not quite a person. A dark shape, fluid and formless, almost like the silhouette in the photograph. It had no face, no clear limbs, just density, and the sense that it was smiling. The car's engine hummed again, even though he hadn't touched it. Inside the cabin, the lights dimmed. The photo on the seat, the one with the writing, burst into flame. A slow, controlled burn that left behind only a scorched edge and the final word still visible. Again, he turned to run. His legs didn't move. Instead, his hands, against his will, reached for the driver's door. He sat down, closed it. The figure in the passenger seat turned its head, or what might have been a head, toward him. A voice, not his own, filled the car. Ready for pickup. The GPS blinked to life. A new destination, Scenic Byway 12, origin point. Estimated time, 67 minutes. Jared's reflection stared back at him in the rearview mirror, but something was off. His reflection wasn't synced with him anymore. It blinked when he didn't, moved its head slightly left when he leaned right. And in the back seat of the reflected version, the couple sat waiting again, still, silent, patient. Then the screen of his phone lit up one final time. New passengers connected. The couple, round trip requested. Status, ongoing. Jared gripped the wheel. He didn't remember starting the engine, but the car was already in motion. Outside, the road wound endlessly forward. Behind him, the same pale couple reappeared in the mirror, hands folded. Smiling faintly, the ride had never ended.
So, you made it this far. Impressive. My goal is to bring you videos that will make you think. What if this is actually true? Consider subscribing to get direct access to new videos and turn on notifications. I'll see you in the next video. If you have the courage to watch until the end.